Hello, you're listening to an original podcast from the Oliver Wolcott Library in Litchfield, Connecticut.
Good evening. Welcome to the Oliver Wolcott Library. Tonight we're honored to have author Andy Thibault here with us. The author of More Cruel Justice, which we're going to hear about tonight. It's a volume of essays that is credited with helping to free a woman unjustly convicted of premeditated murder. That woman, Bonnie Foreshaw, has joined us tonight. Where are you, Bonnie? Thibault's reporting has tackled police brutality in Hartford in the early 1990s, the Young and Rubicam comeback to Jamaica kickback scandal, the financial irregularities of the late Commerce Secretary Ron Brown, and the 1996 bombing at Centennial Olympic Park in Atlanta. He's the author of several books, including History of the State of Connecticut State Police and Law and Justice in Everyday Life. More recently, Andy was one of the few reporters to cover the Boston Marathon bombing trial gavel to gavel. His reports can be found at www.nbcnews.com. Enter Andy Thibault in the search box. He's also chairman emeritus of the Connecticut Young Writers Trust and was an adjunct professor at Western Connecticut State University and the University of Hartford. Last year, he was honored by the Connecticut Council on Freedom of Information with the Stephen Collins Award for his many contributions to the cause of open and accountable government and a free and vigorous press. His websites include morecooljustice.com and cooljustice.blogspot.com. We've got wine and beer here for you tonight to enjoy during the program, and Andy is going to also have books for sale and signing after his talk as well. Welcome, Andy.
Thanks a lot. Well, yes, the refreshment stand is open. Grapes, cheese, crackers, wine, and many varieties of beer. The band still didn't show up. And Heather and a lot of other nice people at the library put out a lot of good programs and work hard every day and help people when they're lost. I usually come in here lost a few times a week. They're very nice to me. It's sort of a quirk of fate how Bonnie got out. It wasn't like the system worked or anything. But just to set the table, I'm going to take the easy way out, and I got a 1-minute video about Bonnie's case and a 2-minute video that is about the book. So I just kind of push the buttons.
Journalist Andy Thibault played a critical role in winning clemency for Bonnie Jean Foreshaw. Earlier this year, he came upon a memo written 24 years ago by now Superior Court Judge John Blue, who back then was a public defender. Thibault explains Blue wrote the bombshell memo which said the prosecution jacked up charges of premeditated murder of someone Foreshaw had never met when manslaughter was actually the appropriate charge.
By virtue of the publication of this memo, the State Board of Pardons and Paroles reversed the decision and decided to grant Bonnie a clemency hearing.
Bonnie Jean Foreshaw had always claimed the shooting of Joyce Amos occurred accidentally while she was trying to defend herself from a man who threatened to attack. Brian Schneider, WCBS 880 News.
The fix is in. Find out how and why at morecooljustice.com. More Cool Justice shows that the odds can be beaten. I was inspired to compile this second collection of columns when, after decades of banging my head against the wall, I actually got a good result. Freedom for Bonnie Foreshaw. Beyond that, I'm grateful for the chance to express my views on subjects including the politics of justice, good and bad, cops and prosecutors and judges, poets, writers, boxers, musicians, and artists. More Cool Justice takes the reader into the depths of major stories, including the Woody Allen sex assault case, the Michael Scapel appeal, the imprisonment of a transgender teen without charges, struggles in girls' sports to establish equal rights via Title IX, and the widespread assault on a bedrock of democracy, the public's right to know. I continue to pursue several stories that involve law enforcement corruption and demand resolution. In particular, the Caparino, Badaracco, and Smolinski missing person homicide cases. Thank you, readers, sources, colleagues, and especially all those who labor for Bonnie and other victims of injustice at morecooljustice.com.
Thanks for watching that stuff. I'd like to read a little bit about Bonnie's case, maybe a little bit about the Badaracco case, depending, how it goes. And then Bonnie will talk a little bit about subjects, possibly including how they don't prepare you for freedom after taking away your freedom and conditioning you to have no will or critical thinking. And Bonnie has also witnessed the mistreatment of cancer patients at the Niantic Jail, which has a formal name, but that's how I recall it, the Niantic Jail. And what else? Mold problems in Niantic. Some of the subjects we talked about. And then Bonnie and I will take questions, and the refreshment stand is still open, and there are bathrooms here. So this is from May 2013 under headline, "Why Does Connecticut Prison Warehouse Still Stonewall Hearing for Bonnie Foreshaw?" No prisoner has been in the Niantic Jail, a.k.a. York Correctional Institution, longer than Bonnie Jean Foreshaw, a battered and sexually abused woman who has somehow managed to survive and hold on to her humanity. Every day Foreshaw remains in prison is a crime against humanity perpetrated by the state of Connecticut. She should have been freed many years ago. Foreshaw gave birth to her first child after being raped at age 12. She's been a victim of violence and sexual abuse from childhood through her nearly 26 years in prison. After she was beaten by her third husband, she carried a gun for protection. She was a machinist for Wire Mold Company in Hartford for 10 years and a shop steward. She bought a house in Bloomfield and cared for her children. Her third husband continued to stalk her. One night in 1986, Foreshaw stopped for a drink at the Jamaican Progressive League in Hartford. A man named Hector Freeman offered her a drink. She declined. Freeman pursued Foreshaw, would not leave her alone, followed her to her car. Freeman asked Foreshaw why she thought she was too good for a drink with him. Freeman said again and again he was going to fuck her up. Freeman came toward her. He reached into his pocket. Foreshaw feared Freeman was going to pull a knife or a gun. Instead, Freeman pulled a pregnant woman in front of him. Foreshaw, then age 38, simultaneously fired her gun. She hit the pregnant woman who died. That woman, Joyce Amos, was used as a human shield after she tried to restrain Freeman. Prosecutor James Thomas grossly overcharged Foreshaw for premeditated murder of a person she had never met. The prosecution conveniently failed to disclose that Freeman had pending charges for assault of a police officer. A judge ruled Freeman's tainted testimony was just fine. That's the way it works when the forces of the state want a conviction for an inflated charge, regardless of the facts. The highest proper charge for Foreshaw would have been manslaughter. Justice might have been served and she would have been freed many years ago. At times like this, it makes absolutely no sense that some people are in jail and others get to play golf and collect state pensions. Talking specifically about the prosecutor Thomas in this case. Foreshaw wrote of her remorse in a volume of redemptive memoirs, Couldn't Keep It to Myself, edited by the novelist Wally Lamb. This is Bonnie speaking. Quote, I never lost sight of the fact that I still had my life, and Joyce Amos, the lady who had tried to help me that night, had lost hers. She had been someone's mother and someone's daughter, same as me. A powerful sadness was closing in. I began to ask myself how I could survive, or if I even wanted to. While in jail, Foreshaw has been a surrogate mother and grandmother to many troubled women and teenage girls. She's active in literacy volunteers, alternatives to violence, and the hospice program. Guards call her a model inmate and a source of wisdom. Plus, they were scared shitless of her after a while. Just thought I'd throw that in, Bonnie. In all my years of working with offenders and ex-offenders, retired York counselor Ann Koletsky wrote, I cannot think of another incarcerated woman in whom I have had such confidence that her resettlement into society will be crime-free and successful for all of us. Her statement, Koletsky's, was important, not only on its merits, but her husband happened to be a judge, so it gave her more juice. Dr. Evan Stark, a professor at Rutgers and an expert on domestic violence, has written that Foreshaw, quote, acted in fear of her life and her actions constituted a self-defense. Her understanding of the danger she faced and her response were drawn from an astute and experience-tested understanding of situations in which men use violence and control to hurt or dominate women. Indeed, one of her husbands beat Foreshaw with a baseball bat and stabbed her in the neck, landing her in intensive care. Dr. Donald Grayson, a psychiatrist who has been an expert prosecution witness, said Foreshaw represents no danger to others or self and has a good deal to offer in a positive sense to her family and others in the community. Grayson has agreed to act as a counselor and therapist for Foreshaw upon her release. Now 64 years old, if I had it right then, this was a few years ago, Foreshaw has been denied for the second time even a hearing on a modest proposal for a sentence reduction. A hearing request was denied in 2007 and again this month, this is May 2013, under bizarre circumstances. A probation officer reported that Foreshaw's, quote, body language and affect was such that she didn't seem interested in her clemency application. Whoa. That person needs to do a little time and sample prison cuisine, sensory deprivation, and at least mild doses of sadism. Or, as noted criminal defense attorney Richard Meehan, who has filed the Foreshaw case for many years, put it, all the more reason there should have been a hearing. It is patently unfair that the subjective conclusions of one probation officer could impact her ability to get a hearing where the entire panel would have the chance to judge this. If the PO spent decades in prison, I wonder what that person's affect would be. Foreshaw is seeking a reduction in sentence from 45 years to 40 years. Her filing was written primarily by Richard Emanuel, considered one of the top appellate lawyers in Connecticut. The granting of a hearing does not in itself support Foreshaw's bid. It would just be an acknowledgement that this human being deserves a fair hearing. So far, that has been too much for the powers that be in Connecticut to stomach. The so-called Board of Pardons and Paroles asserts in its value statement that public safety is best achieved if criminal justice policy takes both punishment and rehabilitation into account. This is a sick joke, but there it is, right on the state website. So that's sort of a table setter for Bonnie being jerked around for decades. She had many lawyers working for her. Some of them were even good. A lot of them weren't. And, they denied her that hearing. And then one of the handouts you've got tonight is the Blue Note, which is a memo by Judge John Blue. So it was like a quirk of fate that Bonnie got out. Judge John Blue wrote this memo on his last day of being a public defender, and then he became a judge. And he wrote it to Joette Katz, who was a supervisor, and then she became a judge the next day. So this memo was buried for 20-something years. And not that I'm a fan of Judge Blue, but I think it's very well written, and it's like, it just tells how the case was screwed up. Now, this, even finding this might not have mattered if Judge Blue had not been a judge in the Cheshire murder case. He became famous and like could do no wrong, and anything he says has extra currency because he did those cases. He didn't screw it up for an appeal, and a lot of the powers that be pay attention to Judge Blue. So that's what I call the quirk of fate. That it's not because the system worked; it's just all these things came together. And the woman who was the chair of the Board of Pardons and Paroles was very attentive to the media and her reputation. And after she handled this case, she got to be a judge, Erica Tyndall. And I think she was a very smart, shrewd, and very competent person who acted in an ethical manner as she chaired the Board of Pardons and Paroles and did the right thing in Bonnie's case. I think she had to twist a lot of arms behind the scenes. So I'll read a little bit more about the publication of the Blue Note, and I refer you to it for whenever, if you need extra copies. My card and email are in by the books, and I can email it to you. So I start off this column, the Blue Note Key to Bonnie Foreshaw Case Resolution. I started out, Judge Blue is correct in his interpretation. I'm still waiting to hear those words from Erica Tyndall, chairwoman of the State Board of Pardons and Paroles. It should not be hard at all for Tyndall, billed as an advocate for domestic abuse victims, to utter those 7 words in the infamous Bonnie Foreshaw case. Now, I'll skip over a few things, but Blue called the trial lawyer in Bonnie's case. He said of the public defender that he committed malpractice taking a number of forms. He called his performance disturbing and shocking. Bottom line, Ms. Foreshaw did not have a fair trial. And I mentioned before about Bonnie's injuries and being a battered person. And Blue writes, the 2 most flagrant aspects of his fellow public defender's representation were a failure to challenge a highly questionable confession and a failure to present an effective mental state defense. So, as I recall, Bonnie was coerced into writing something, but she said she didn't want to sign it, and they still called that a confession. Here's more from Judge Blue. A great deal of this relevant material was never produced at trial at all. No friends or family who knew Mrs. Foreshaw testified. Former husband had beaten Mrs. Foreshaw on the head with a baseball bat, and she had spent 2 weeks in the hospital. No hospital records were produced. Ms. Foreshaw had 3 failed marriages ending in domestic violence and divorce. No divorce or police records were ever produced. After she got out of the hospital, she had head problems and went to see a neurologist. No neurologist was produced for trial. The neurologist referred her to 2 different psychiatrists who saw her a number of times. Neither of these psychiatrists was produced. The end result was that the jury learned little or nothing about Ms. Foreshaw and what was happening in her mind. She did not have an effective defense, which is the standard for getting a new trial because you have a crappy lawyer. Also, Blue wrote, the public defender unaccountably withdrew a suppression motion immediately before the officer who had obtained the confession began to testify. So they were pushing this public defender around. And after the Blue Note was published, as you heard from the CBS radio, the board decided to grant Bonnie a hearing, and then she was freed. And I think rather than going into other cases, because we have Bonnie here, maybe it's a good time for you to say a few words about whatever you want to talk about. Is that all right now? So come on up here. You want to sit or stand?
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Thanking Andy and Bob and Marcus, who is not here. As Andy just spoke on, it's been a long haul for me, and I'm just fortunate enough to have met him, and I met him in one of our writing classes. And I had heard so much about him, so when he came, I was curious. I already knew Wally, who was in charge of the writing group. And I took writing as a way to help deal with the reality of being incarcerated. I had never wrote before, and I didn't have anyone to really express my feelings, and writing was therapeutic for me. It was like helping me to deal with what I was dealing with from day to day. And it helped purge me of the secrets that was keeping me sick, because I came from a very dysfunctional family, and I have been from one extreme to the next. And in our family and our culture, it was something that women didn't talk about. I mean, you work 5 days a week. Saturday and Sunday, you're running for your life, or you're getting battered and banged, and the children. So it was something you learn to live with. And I didn't want to repeat the same mistakes that my mother repeated by seeing her go through that. But it was destined, I would say, that I did go through that and some. Being incarcerated was the worst thing that could have ever happened to me, because no one wake up one night and just say, I'm going to jail for a little while and I'll be back. I left home to take a friend home and never got back home for like 27 years. And that was more than a nightmare. That was worse than a bad dream. That was my life, my everything. And it took me at least 5 years to come to terms with it. 5 calendar day-for-day years. And coming to terms with it never prepare you for the everyday routine of what we had to go through in there. And sitting and telling you about it would never make you really understand. You have to really tour these places when you have a chance to go on the inside and take a look for yourself to see what it's like. Because I'm sure everybody in this room knows somebody incarcerated, maybe been incarcerated, have heard of someone. And it don't discriminate. It could be your loved one, it could be a friend of your neighbors or whatever. It's very real. And it's not a correction facility that your loved ones are going to. It's a corrupt place to be. When I say corrupt, it's very few honest people that work for DOC. And I'm speaking from my experience, because while I was there, I was sexually abused, and I thought that would never happen to me. We was locked in for days and days on end. It was just a nightmare. The fact that I knew I wasn't getting a fair trial didn't make a difference, because who am I? I mean, if I can't tell you what happened, who can? If you don't believe me, who do you believe? If you're saying I'm lying and I'm saying I'm not, then who are you to say I am? It's been a long ordeal, and my coming home was so surreal that I didn't know what was going on from one minute to the next until they finally came and told me, well, you're going to be released. We're giving you a clemency. Well, I was all good and happy to go home. But you're really not doing me no favor, because I would have been going home anyway in a year and a half. So thank you for the clemency, but no thank you, because you're not doing anything to assist me once I get out of here. And who am I? I'm an inmate. I have a number. No one answered any of my questions, but I have to answer all of their questions. So again, I asked, who am I? I was an inmate. I didn't have a name, I had a number. And that's the way it was. Either you respect them or they disrespect you, but I still respect them. That's just me. When I did get the real answers about going home, I still didn't know when I was going home until a week when they came and brought me the papers. Nobody, for days, for months, for weeks, for years, I was trying to get in different programs. I did everything from hospice. I was a hospice volunteer. And I did that for about 3 years, and I began to suffer from burnout. Not from my sister in arms, which was another inmate that was residing in the medical reason, because some was terminally ill and some was just not well enough to be on the compound. Even volunteering to make the program itself a success, we still was dogged as inmates. We worked like we was DOC workers, but not getting the respect or the pay that DOC was earning itself, but getting the prestige and the accolades that the programs were so successful. But without the inmates, the program wouldn't have been successful. It was the inmates who dedicated their time, their heart, their everything from commissary to writing the letters to bathing a patient or just sitting there listening. That's what gave a lot of us the will to live, just knowing that he was helping somebody less fortunate than we. When we got ready, speaking for myself, when I got ready to leave, nobody set up appointments for me to get mental health. Nobody set appointments for me to have money. Nobody set up appointments for me to have identification, or housing, or transportation, or even give me $1 for a bus fare. I was released without anything except for a piece of paper that was supposed to serve as an ID for me to get identification from the motor vehicle department, and I had to go there 6 times before I could get a card for identification. So for about 6 weeks, I was walking around with no identification, which could have landed me back in prison. But thank God for my daughter, who has been very helpful to me, and she's been contacting people in the know of things, and she's been a tremendous help to me. And then other people that I know from being incarcerated will give me little hints, help me out, or refer me there or some other place. But the system isn't set up for us to be successful. It's set up for us to fail. Because we, as inmates, are security for the state. This is the only stable economy the state got going for them, is the Department of Correction. And inmates are the modern-day commodity that, I mean, when you really think about it, it's a big organizations with many umbrellas under one caption, DOC. And I feel for the ladies that we are left behind, because when I was there, they had so many in-house problems with the mold, the mildew, and the deterioration of the buildings. It's not helpful for the women there, because they breathe in mold, they're in inhumane, housing that shouldn't even be open for them to be there, but they are still there in this terrible environment. And from what I'm being told, that it's not getting any better in there, it's getting worse. And I believe it, because a lot of us old-timers used to keep a lot of things in check when it came to COs. We had certain COs we could talk to and get things done, or kind of get the attention that it needs in order to make it work. But now, I don't know what's going on. A lot of people who was there when we was there have retired. You got new workers there. And from what I'm hearing about the ladies that I see who have recently come home, it's a madhouse. It's a madhouse. What do I do? Where do I go? How can I get things to be better? It's bringing it to the public to let them know that a lot needs to be done, and it's not all about the Department of Correction, but it's about the inmates who are being held, incarcerated by the state of Connecticut. It's not a place where you're rehabilitated unless you take that upon yourself to get involved in rehabilitating yourself. You take advantage of what's offered, but it's not very much offered along that line. When Andy them came, it was quite different back then, because we had Wally. Wally would come in every week or every other week. We had other writers who would come in, and they was treated worse than we was treated. A lot of times they would come and they wouldn't even let them in. A lot of time, company wanted to come in, like sometimes the monks, what was they called? The Buddhist monks used to come, and a lot of time they would lock us up. When they came, they would say, well, we was under a 5-day lockdown, institutional lockdown. They would do anything to keep the outside from coming in to see how we were actually living. Like if they knew an inspection was coming, we had to clean from sun up to sundown to pass inspection. But the minute inspection was over, things would go back to what it was. All kind of insects, mice. The whole, the new building is completely sinking in. And the mildew from the leakage of the new building is so well known until it's like the CEOs don't even want to work there. But they house us there, and we are in a controlled environment, mean everything is inside, electronically controlled. Therefore, they don't have to be bothered with us unless they talking to us through the communication system. Everything is controlled by a panel. One officer can control the whole unit, which they have two, which is downstairs. You are locked 3 times in order to be safe. Lock when you come in, a lock when you go upstairs, and a lock to go to your room. That's 3 locks that we have to go through. And every day is different. Every shift is different. I just like to see some positive things happen to help those that's less fortunate than the ones that have left Niantic or York or Camp Nana, as we used to call it. It used to be more humane back in the day, which was 86 when I went there. In 95, things began to be more structured and inhumane as far as the women were concerned. I thank God for Andy and Wally and others who have been through some of the things and have witnessed some of the things that we have endured when we was there. Andy input in the blue letter or the blue note was very beneficial to my freedom, because it's one thing about Andy, he don't give up. And when he came to Niantic, he know I had went to SEG for not wearing pants.
You wore a dress, right?
Yeah. Before I got to the dress, though, I wore a robe. Oh, I went to SEG for not wearing pants.
Well, we know somebody who went to SEG for having a granola bar.
Nah, get out.
What do you say?
Huh? Segregation. Isolation.
Yeah, where you lock 23 out of 24 hours. Yeah, but I guess Andy didn't really know what the skirt looked like, so I noticed him easing around the table. And all of a sudden he looked down, and I noticed that he was looking to see was I wearing pants or not. And it tickled me because it looked like he said, okay, she really does have on a dress, a skirt. But he was so comical, and from that day to this day, Andy has been one of my most trusted friends. He has been a thorn in many people's side, but it worked. He got the attention. He don't stop until he get the attention, and he gets it. And he speaks the truth, and a lot of people can't tolerate honesty. And for that, I respect him the most, because look where I am now. And he has a lot to do with it, because he was involved with lawyers. He was involved with everybody involved with me, from other inmates that was there to the ones that are free now. And I see a few that's here tonight, and I tell you, I am overwhelmed because I see one of my closest ones, Barbara, and then I see my other one right there. So, in the family and friends, so, I mean, Andy and Wilbur. Wilbur has been there through the ordeal, stand in the background, but they're all the same. But I tell you, I've learned a lot from my experience. And I know in this world you can't make it by yourself. You need people, good people in your life, because when bad things happen to you, they're the first one to go to battle for you. And for that, I'm truly grateful for everybody that came to my aid, and I will forever be grateful, because without them, I still will be incarcerated more than likely, because my release date was 2017. So that's 2 years from here. But every day I'm grateful, because I left so many suffering souls behind that can't find their way out for whatever reason, or can't stay out. But the fact remains, we are here for each other. And I find that when we find each other, we try and support each other on whatever level that we can. And that's how it is. We become friends, and we try and reach out even beyond the walls of Niantic. We might have met there, but our friendship traveled beyond there to here, because look at the people who came to support me tonight. Thanks to Andy and Bob and Marcus and other people by word of mouth. But I'm truly grateful for your interest and for whatever input that you might have, or whatever questions you might ask. You think we could go?
I just want to mention that Bonnie is writing a memoir, and Wilbert, who's here, where are you, Wilbert? So Wilbert worked at the factory with Bonnie, right? Mm-hmm. Where Bonnie was a shop steward, mm-hmm. And he's been a constant friend.
Yeah.
So
for over 40 years.
We'll take questions and.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm curious with now Judge Blue, after he wrote the memo, Andy, did he have ever any involvement?
No. He wrote the memo, and the next day he got sworn in as a judge. So he didn't do anything. I mean, that was his excuse.
Well,
yeah.
Well, and again, as a follow-up.
And Joe had Katz, same thing.
I mean, again, without knowing the full details of how all this transpired after you were incarcerated. But I'm assuming there were various efforts over the years, and I read a little bit about it, to try to reopen the case. And so my question, I guess, is, it would seem logical to me that Blue would have been put on the spot to say, hey, come in, because he did have some currency to his judicial career, and I think it may have...
There are some lawyers who worked honestly and earnestly on Bonnie's case for many years.
Yeah.
There are some other lawyers who maybe had questionable judgment or were not even good people or good lawyers, you know. So...
Okay.
But I still think it was a quirk of fate. If the Blue Note had come out before Cheshire, I don't think it would have mattered.
Right.
That's just my visceral feeling.
Yeah, this would have been another old memo.
Yeah.
Andy, can the system be saved? I mean, it seems like it's so far gone that it doesn't produce anywhere near what we need it to produce, and it doesn't seem to be headed in the right direction.
Well,
can you save the system, or do you have to really replace the system?
Well, I don't think you can do either.
The DOC, now they're handling incarceration.
Well, I mean, Bonnie's case is one of many, you know. There are innocent people in jail, or people grossly overcharged, or charged because they're poor or a minority. If you grow up in the North End of Hartford, you're going to end up in a different place statistically than if you grow up in Avon. You know, that's Connecticut. So in other cases I've worked on, there are good cops who are punished for trying to do their job, or if they try to arrest a judge or a prosecutor or whatever. So there's fewer media outlets, but people find ways to get the word out. I don't think you're going to fix the system or get a new system, but you can have an impact if you get people together to get the word out.
Well, as things stand now, when a correction officer tries to do the right thing, he or she is screwed not only by his colleagues, but by the system itself.
Well, I mean, there's guards in the New York system, the New York Times reported the other day, who would beat a man so badly that they had to cut off a piece of his testicle, and they couldn't fire that guard. You know, they're like, that's because of the union contract or the political lack of will in New York.
Our current our current DSPP commissioner was the commissioner of correction.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know about Dora.
Well, yeah, it's kind of a tangent for our purposes here.
Yeah.
Okay. I know there's stories there. Yes, ma'am.
Bonnie, what kept you going all those years? What helped you hold on to your sense of self?
Faith. Yeah, I'm a strong believer. And then I was surrounded by good women that were also there. And I don't know, and keeping busy and taking groups and volunteering. We basically stayed involved in something all the time to stay out of our unit. We stayed in school. That was our hub right there in school. We went to school 5 days a week, Saturday and Sunday. Some go to church, some go to visit, some take time to do their homework or whatever. But school was our relief because it was education that we was involved in. Then there was the writing group. Then there was what was that comes in and do the plays at Niantic? Avda. Yeah, a dance group that's here. I think they at Wesleyan that used to come in, and anything that we could get involved in to keep ourselves out of that building, that's what we did. If that meant we have to go and be hospice workers overnight to relieve one to come back, the other one to go, that's what we did. We was never around to be in the mix of anything that concerned the COs. We was basically self-governed. That way, we knew the rules, we knew the regulations, then nobody had to come tell us. We knew what time we had to be in the room. We started getting up 10 minutes ahead of time. Because if the CO come by and tell you, all right, get in your room, they may say it in a way that rub you the wrong way. Or be very mean and nasty about it. So to save yourself that problem, you get up and do what you got to do yourself. So that's how the majority of us who have made it did it. There is no other way. Yeah.
So Bonnie, I have a loaded question and a personal question. The loaded one, was there a library in the prison?
Yeah, that's where we were.
Yeah.
We stayed in the library with Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee's retired now. They have no librarian. So that means he was instrumental in getting everything we needed there. Now he's retired.
No replacement.
No replacement.
Personal question is, what happened to your personal family, your biological family during the time of incarceration? Referred to your daughter.
There she is right there.
Right here.
I was there every other day, every weekend, and every other day.
For the
whole entire
duration.
time she was there.
Starting at what age? What
When
age?
my mom, or me, I was 18.
18.
Yeah, and I even got to stay on the premises and live in the trailer with my kids and my brother and my sisters. And we went in the back on trailer visits for the weekend. We get locked down on Friday and we come out on Sunday.
Wow. That's what kept you going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically, family.
She's got a
Family.
smile too.
Thank you.
Question in the back there.
Well, I just wanted to know if you could tell us a little bit about the writing programs that were available.
The Holy Lamb thing.
Well, Wally came in because during that time the suicide rate was high. And he heard about it, so he decided to come to see what he could do to help the women to be more realistic about what they were facing instead of taking that way out. And he came in. He was supposed to come for that one time only. And he gave us like little writing quizzes, and he started doing little things that made us think. And at first we didn't trust him. We have trust issues, all of us. And being a man, we were saying, well, why is he here? What is he for? What is he coming for? What do he want? And after the first group, and he seemed like he was interested in seeing where we were, and we was trying to see where he was. He came back the following week, and the next thing you know, we warmed up to him. And we began to like his ideas because he wanted us to write down something and bring in and read to the class. And he said anything, it don't have to be personal, light, whatever. And he gave us food for thought. He didn't dictate to us, and I tell you, he's a hell of a man to been involved with that group that we was in. I'm telling you, that man, he cried with us. I mean, he heard he heard things we didn't even confess to our psyche. I think he heard things we still haven't talked about to anybody but the people in that class. Because for me to write, I just started out simple stuff like something that maybe happened while we was waiting in class or something like that, and I'll read it, and we'll start critiquing each other writing, and it began to get interesting. And the more he came, the more we began to trust him and to see what kind of guy he really was all about. And he gave us his best, and we gave him our all. And I tell you, I spurged and I purged until it started coming, and it didn't stop until it was all out. I felt like a burden had been lifted off my shoulders because it was something I had been burying for years and years and years and never had an outlet. I didn't know how to bring it out. I didn't have anybody to express it to or even take the time to write about it. I just kept it all in. And then he started listening to other people write about different things in their lives. Everybody was on a different level with their writing, and everything was very interesting, and we always shared. That's how I met Wally. And that's when Andy came in. He heard about our writing, and he became more and more interested in the women for who they were. And he, he didn't stop coming, but yet and still he was in contact with what was going on, and I'm grateful for that because he was very helpful to me and also Wally. I tell you, I don't think I would be here without these guys in my life. Not today anyway. I would still be sitting in Niantic going through the chaos.
Another question back there.
Andy, now there were a lot of women in the writing group. So how did you take an interest in Ms. Foreshaw and take up her cause? And how come she never received any state aid when she got out?
Well, the second question is easy. I don't have a clue, but I don't know. I became interested. Bonnie said hi to Barbara, who's here, and Barbara won. Was it Newman's own PEN, the Writers Organization, Freedom of Speech Award, and the state of Connecticut responded by destroying all her work in her computer and shutting down the writing program. And this was all detailed on 60 Minutes. So when that happened, I became interested in the writers program and wrote a lot about it, and I got to know various people, including the person who got sent to isolation for having a granola bar, which is not here tonight, but she's pretty cool. And so I wrote about various columns and stories about the writing program when they shut it down and tried to take punitive actions. The two books are books of redemption, not like, oh, I did a crime and got away with it or anything. And they were punished for actually rehabilitating themselves. And then I got to learn about Bonnie's case, which was, right up there among the most screwed up cases I've ever seen. And, it's definitely in the top tier of that. So cooperative people gave me documents, and I wrote a lot about it, and people told me what was going on inside hearings, and I pursued it. That's how I got involved in it.
What year was that? First time you ever?
When is the writing program, like 2000, 2002 or something? So I've been, around that time I started working on Bonnie's case, and, I wrote about the assault she described at the hands of a guard in prison, and FBI and state police did multiple investigations, and I think they didn't charge the person, but she was gently pushed out after a while, not too soon. So that's how they covered that one up. But Amnesty International did a report many years ago about the sexual assaults and suicides at Niantic.
What kind of pressure did you experience in your writing?
Mostly low blood pressure, but solved it with potato chips and beer. Yeah. But nothing really. I've rarely been physically threatened or anything like that on anything. Mostly like people I don't like, they see me and they walk away, or yell at me or whatever. So.
You say you rarely been threatened. You've been threatened though.
Yeah, a long time ago. Like in the 70s. Yeah.
And he's still alive. Congratulations.
Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah.
Bonnie, I have a question. If you don't want to answer it, that's fine. But I understand the circumstances of everything that happened in 1986. And I also have read, the fact that even though you were defending yourself was a bullet from a gun that took the life of as you said, a mother and a daughter. How have you come to grips with that over all these years? The fact that you had no choice. What did that mean to you, and how did you reconcile yourself to that part of the situation?
Well, it's something I live with every day. I mean, you have to learn to live with it. You can't go back and undo what's already done. And it was harder for me to forgive myself than it was for me to ask for forgiveness. It's just been recently, before I came home, that I gave myself permission to forgive myself for what I did, because it wasn't no intentions on my behalf. And I have to learn to live with that, and that's what I do. And that's what gives me the motivation to reach out to help others less fortunate than me because of that.
Guess we're all set, huh? We'll be hanging out.